Evening, everybody. Today is May 7th, Monday, shortly after 7:30. This is the regular meeting of Lakewood City Council. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. If you would now please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Anderson. Present. Bullock. Here. George. Here. Litton.
Here.
O'Leary.
Here.
O'Malley.
Here.
Rader.
Here.
Reading and disposal of the minutes of the regular meeting of council held April 16th, 2018.
Move to dispose without the necessity of a reading. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to dispose of the minutes without a reading? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes. And before we get into our docket as numbered this evening, we've got a number of items that I believe will be moving up to the top of our docket in recognition of a number of outstanding groups and entities that are with us here this evening. But first, before we do that, I'd like to call to the podium and recognize David Turner and Karen Kirsch from First Energy, who are here to make a brief announcement with respect to energy cost assistance programs available to our residents this summer. Thank you.
Yes, you may recall that I am your main rep for the city of Lakewood, but I've been on leave since January, and David has graciously taken over. I'm just learning about this because I was off, so he's going to take over, but just wanted to let you know I'm coming back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council President, members of council, Mayor Summers, good evening. Before you are a number of different programs that First Energy offers its customers throughout our service territory. As many of you know, coming out of the winter months, you may have elderly residents who may be working at or below the poverty line, and typically they have higher than normal utility bills and have difficulty paying those bills. Oftentimes, my office, Karen's office, we get calls once that customer has been cut off, and they're saying, what can you do to help this individual? How am I going to meet this bill amount? And oftentimes we find out on the back end that they qualify for one of these programs and sometimes many others. So to be brief, if you have a big agenda and the cabs are on, I'll go over three of the items that I think are very pertinent. The first one is what's called PIP Plus, which is the Percentage of Income Payment Plan Plus. And what this allows for is an extended payment plan that allows regulated gas or electric company to accept payments based on a person's percentage of their income. So at its most basic level, if they're at or below 150% of the income guidelines, they can either pay 10% of their gross monthly household income or $10 a month, whichever is highest. So imagine that no matter what their usage is, I've seen bills as low as $15 a month as far as what they're paying, while if they're paying a normalized bill, it might be a couple $100. So very important, something to be aware of. Next is the HEAP Crisis Program, which is the Summer Crisis Program. This program will actually begin in July and run through August 31st, so really like the dog days of summer. But what that allows for, once again, for people who are low income eligible, have elderly folks in their household, or have a qualifying medical condition, the customer must have or be at 175% of the federal poverty guidelines, have a person that's at least 60 years of age, or an illness that would be beneficial for them. Once again, it's income assistance. So think about the hottest days of the summer. You have an elderly resident at their house. They may not have an energy efficient home. Their bills are higher because of those cooling expenses. This helps them manage that. Next would be, if you on the second page, right column, our Community Connections program, which is I think one of our better programs that I firmly and strongly believe in. This helps people with their electric energy conservation measures. So oftentimes folks will say, hey, I want to make my house more energy efficient, but I can't afford it. So once again, if you qualify based on your income, We will help you with energy audits, installation of CFL bulbs, blower door tests, air sealing, weather stripping, caulking foam, appliance replacement, air conditioning assistance, things of this nature. So if you have somebody who's elderly, somebody, once again, who may be at or below the poverty guidelines, this is a great program for them to get their household up as far as from an energy conservation perspective. The last part of this is at the bottom of the page, the Electric Partnership Plan, EPP. It's funded by First Energy. It's designed to improve the electric efficiency of low-income households of customers who participate in the PIP Plus program. So if you're already on PIP, you can take advantage of this program as well. I sent this to you electronically, Council President Leary. I definitely recommend, if you can, put this on your page. If you have people who are saying, where can I get information, this is a quick go-to. Our contact information is below for the illuminating company called customer service. They'll just need their basic information on their address, their account, and some qualifying documents for their income. These programs really go underused. So my goal tonight is to get out, talk to members of council, and you talk to community groups, neighborhood organizations, churches, that general person that's called your office. Gives a great reference point.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the presentation tonight and sharing the information. I think that obviously, as council members, we encounter those situations all too often, and it's great to know of all the tools that are in the toolbox to help with those situations. And I think it's also great, as you noted, there are some efficiency-oriented programs as well, which is, I think, a real alignment of the city's interests in seeing all of our residents utilize more efficient practices and efficient residences, and at the same time lowers costs. So that's a great program as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Mayor Summers.
Yep. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I just want to say to the First Energy reps, thank you. I agree that it's a valuable program, and what's also valuable is your help solving neighborhood problems with power lines and the like, and we have exactly that just today. There's a utility pole close to the high school that a neighbor emailed us about mutually, and so can we follow up on that one? They've got some poles in the wake of the high school construction that still need to be addressed in part, and want to make sure that we do that if for the portion of the situation that First Energy has some say-so on. So we'll follow up by email. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Now proceeding to our docket. As I mentioned, we're going to skip around a little bit tonight. We've got 3 resolutions here congratulating and honoring. The first relates to Police Week, and that's docket items number 7 and 8. So with this, at this time, without objection from council, I would ask that we move docket items 7 and 8 to the top of our agenda. Hearing no objection, Madam Clerk.
Item 7, communication from Councilmember O'Malley regarding recognizing National Police Week.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Malley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dear colleagues, in 1962, President Kennedy proclaimed May 15th as National Peace Officers Memorial Day. Since then, the calendar week in which May 15th falls has been recognized as National Police Week. Police officers in Lakewood and around the country are dedicated public servants who risk their own safety and indeed their lives to serve and protect our citizens on a daily basis. The attached resolution recognizes May 15th as National Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week of May 13th through the 19th as National Police Week. We should always remember those officers who made the ultimate sacrifice in service to our communities and should demonstrate the highest gratitude for all those men and women who continue to tirelessly serve our citizens as police officers. Please join me in supporting this resolution. Sincerely, and Mr. President, although I do indeed hope to introduce this resolution again next year, I would ask that the date 2019 be corrected on the letter to say 2018. Thank you.
Without objection, move to receive and file that report as corrected. Do I have a second? Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file that communication? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 8, Resolution 899718, a resolution to recognize the service of the Lakewood Police Department and law enforcement officials everywhere during National Police Week 2018.
Move to adopt. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to adopt?
Mr. President?
Yes, Councilman Anderson.
First of all,
I'm
thank you.
sorry, Councilman O'Malley.
That's okay.
Wondering why you were looking at me.
Yeah, I just want to thank, again, express gratitude to our police officers who do incredible work in a very difficult environment, often enough, in protecting our citizens and keeping us safe. I'm delighted to be presenting this resolution along with my colleagues this evening to Chief Mele, who's always here with us, but then also Sergeant Matt Peach, who's here representing the Fraternal Order of Police. So thank you again.
Thank you. Any additional comments from council? Hearing none. All those in favor of adoption, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you very much. We'll do a quick photo and then get back to our docket.
I think we'll have special ones all over.
All right. 1, 2, 3, smile. I'll do one more. All right, great. Thanks.
Thank you. That takes care of items 7 and 8. Next, without objection, I would like to move items 9 and 10 to the next top of our docket. That's Gun Violence Awareness Week.
Item 9, communication from council members Anderson and Bullock regarding gun violence.
Thank you. Council members Anderson and Bullock.
Dear members of council, mass shootings are commonly defined as any incident in which 4 or more individuals are shot and/or killed in a single event at the same general time and location, and not including the shooter. We have not had such an incident in Lakewood, but this could just mean that we're lucky, as we've come to terms with the notion that such atrocities can happen anywhere. Gun violence not rising to the level of mass shootings, on the other hand, has impacted Lakewood and virtually every other community across the United States. We ought to not live in a country, state, or city where we grow in our hypervigilance toward and accepting to the notion that mass shootings and gun violence can happen anytime and anywhere. We ought not to accept the notion that we cannot take reasoned and measured steps to reduce gun violence crime and gun-related deaths in this country while simultaneously supporting the United States Constitution, Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. It seems we've been given this false choice for too many years. Efforts to expand mandatory background checks for all private gun sales and sales at gun shows, barring gun purchases by people on federal no-fly watch lists, prohibiting individuals with severe mental health disorders from purchasing guns, increasing the minimum age to purchase so-called semi-automatic weapons and codifying bump stocks and other accessories, dramatically increasing the lethality of certain guns, are steps that have strong bipartisan support among citizens and elected officials. Enacting laws requiring gun owners to safely store guns when not in use will prevent unintentional shootings. But certainly, last but not least, 62% of the 175,703 firearm deaths in the United States from 2012 to 2016 were suicides. Reasonable policy efforts to reduce gun violence should also identify suicide and suicide by firearm as public health emergencies. We hope our colleagues will join us to do a few things. One, pass this resolution recognizing June 1, 2018 as National Gun Violence Awareness Day. Two, support local issue member organizations such as MOMS, Moms Demand Action. And three, encourage our state and federal lawmakers to enact reasonable public policy to reduce gun violence and gun-related deaths in America. Yours in service, yours truly.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file? Councilman Bullock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the citizens who invited City Council to consider a resolution like this, and really thank you to the students who have had to show us all the leadership. It's really to the shame of the adults that we haven't been able to address this successfully up to now. I attended the School Safety Educational Forum, in which we heard a great presentation from the school leadership, the city leadership, and the police leadership to talk about how Lakewood has taken this issue seriously and is prepared. But we lack so many tools to effectively address this. There's huge majorities of people in America who want common sense gun safety laws, background checks, close loopholes, remove weapons of war from our communities, and we don't have it. And it's because we have a runaway special interest who's taken over state government and federal government. And we're going to have to be persistent, patient, and determined if we're ever going to see some common sense take hold. I've got kids now too, and it's become personal in a way that I haven't had before. And anybody who wants to understand the gravity of this, there's a father from Sandy Hook who talks about how he has a dream that he could be there and stop the person who shot his little child, and that should never happen. So to all of us in this room who do have the opportunity, let's resolve to not let politics shut down what's right for our families and our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from council?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Vice President Anderson.
I just want to thank folks for giving me the opportunity to put that letter on the docket. And like my colleague Tom, I have a daughter who attends Lakewood High School. So she hears things on the news, she goes to school, she's part of the safety sort of introduction as to how to respond if there's an active shooter at school, et cetera. So she's nervous and anxious about that. But she's also anxious and nervous about just everyday violence in Lakewood schools, where, you know, just rough and tumble things. And that sort of is elevated in her mind to a whole new level because, you know, above that is this hypervigilance, if you will, in regards to any sort of violence in our schools. So some things are sort of natural. They happen day to day, across generations. This is a new phenomenon. I didn't have to go through training exercises with my teachers when I was in high school in the early 80s about what to do if there's an active shooter in the building. Seems to be the only nation in the world that has this epidemic of school shootings. I don't get it. I don't know how we got here. I don't know exactly how we get out of it, but we got to do something a little bit better than what we have been doing. So I appreciate the opportunity to be heard on this issue tonight, and for the folks that are here to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, any additional questions or comments from council on the motion to receive and file the communication? I know that we do have one audience member from the Moms Demand Action group that signed up to speak, and if it's all right, we'll call you up for the actual resolution itself. Any additional comments or questions on the communication? Hearing none. All those in favor of receiving and filing, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 10, Resolution 899818, a resolution declaring the first Friday in June to be National Gun Violence Awareness Day in Lakewood to honor and remember all victims and survivors of gun violence and to declare that we as a country must do more to reduce gun violence.
Move to adopt.
Second. A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to adopt? Hearing none, we have Ms. Molly Crow signed up to speak. Ms. Crow, if you'd like to approach.
Thank you, Council President, Vice President Anderson, and Council Mayor Summers. Thank you so much for inviting us here tonight and for adopting the resolution. I am the volunteer local lead for the Cleveland chapter of Moms Demand Action and also a Lakewood resident, so I'm very proud of my city for doing this tonight. I'll keep it short and sweet, but on average, 96 Americans die a day by gun violence, so this is I'm very happy that you guys are recognizing this as the public health emergency that it is, and also recognizing the need to do something about it. And I'm happy to say that at the State House level, there has been a number of bills recently introduced that have a good chance of passing that can do just that. So we really need to support that effort, and like you said, just be tenacious and don't give up and keep at it. So I really appreciate your support. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes,
I don't know if
Councilman
this is an appropriate question, but because I get a lot of questions from groups like this, and I think they're great. But would it be wise or appropriate to ask the mayor or the police chief how prepared are we, our school district? And can you kind of explain maybe where we rank? Because I happen to know the answer to this question. It's good. And I would like to maybe connect those dots, and maybe you can share a little bit about how prepared we are as a school district.
Thank you, Councilman Rader, members of council, members of the audience. Actually, working closely with the superintendent, we have identified probably no less than 25 different tactics that we employ on any given hour or day to address the vulnerability of children in our schools district and in our community. In fact, we had a session, a 2-hour session held at Lakewood High School about a month ago to address the question of school safety. But I would say it's a significant team effort. Requires the eyes and ears of staff, significant efforts to train staff at the school building on appropriate behavior. Efforts will be amounting to have school training for students. It's a little more challenging because training has to be age appropriate. It's expected that on September 27th of this year, there will be an opportunity for parents to engage in similar training. So the idea of advancing our training, understanding how it has evolved as the incidents have proven that it should evolve, making sure we advance communications, making sure that we have appropriate links to the existing school communication, including surveillance cameras. Lakewood Schools employs over 700 cameras in their school system, and we expect in short order to have access to about 300 of them in the next month. And as the schools upgrade the remaining 300 or 400, we will have access to those cameras as well. Working with Chief Gillman on emergency medical response is an important element, and those protocols have changed as well. So speed of response, aggressive efforts to attack the vulnerability, isolate students and protect them, and communicate wisely are significant efforts that are underway. I think in our conversation that we had about a month ago, we've identified more steps that we can take to improve. And one of the elements that I would say that is more challenging is, as we've watched other events, is how we can do a better job of communicating to our community, not just our students who are involved necessarily, but the parents and other members. So we're going to be working hard. Chief Gillman is arranging an opportunity for us to do some training on that so we can improve. But it's an evolving strategy and speed of response, aggressiveness of response with appropriate capacity is really the essence. Chief Mele, anything you want to add to that?
I echo what the mayor reported there as far as what we did in the community forum. We prepare frequently with our partners and all the different agencies that may respond to incidents such as a school situation, and we take very seriously our need to prepare the students and the staff and teachers for what could occur and how they can better prepare themselves. So again, we do a lot of training and preparation for something we hope never happens, but we do deal, as probably this resolution tries to address better, we deal with gun violence in the community much more frequently than we would in a school situation. And those are troubling problems. We see guns frequently in the community, whether used in crime or not, that cause our officers concern, that, we're here at the same time as Police Memorial Week, where we see many officers that lose their lives protecting their communities through gun violence. It's a troubling issue, and those are the kind of issues that we see.
One further point that I think we can be very proud of here in Lakewood is that the Cleveland Clinic has made available to students at Lakewood High School mental health services. That heretofore was not something commonly offered at a high school dispensary. Through a combination of juvenile psychiatrists and nurse practitioners, students are able to readily get initial access to mental health. And I think we've all grown to understand that that element is probably maybe the single smartest thing we might do. And how we can do a better job of adding more of those resources will be something where we should strive to work towards. And I know that we all accept that challenge.
Thank you very much for the update.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments on the motion and second to adopt Resolution 899818? Hearing none, all those in favor of adoption say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes. And if, as we did with the last one, if we can make our way down to the floor here for a picture, that would be great. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you. Yeah, you know it.
All right. 1, 2, 3, smile. And again. Very good, thank you.
Okay, our next item to move to the next top of the agenda is item number 11, which is a communication regarding Bike Month. Madam Clerk?
Item 11, communication from council members Bullock and George regarding declaring May to be Lakewood's Bike Month.
Thank you. Councilmember George, or yes, Councilmember George.
Thank you. Dear Mayor and members of council, Lakewood residents can finally enjoy, after the long, cold season, walks and bike rides that improve our health, reduce our fossil fuels, and increase our feeling of well-being. One of the ways for our city to support these healthy endeavors is by declaring Bike Month. Accordingly, we submit for your consideration the attached resolution, which would officially declare May to be Bike Month in Lakewood.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file the communication? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, that motion passes.
Item 12, Resolution 899918, a resolution declaring May 2018 Bike Month in Lakewood.
Thank you. Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to adopt?
Mr. President.
Councilman Bullock.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have with us Lakewood leadership in bicycles and healthy living, and really an integral part of compact urban planning. I hope they'll speak to us in a second. But what's wonderful here is that we're doing this for at least a second year in a row, and that the progress of bike adoption continues, and the support and the education is expanding, and that's the right idea. As we all get more confident on our bicycles, we're going to use it more, be more healthy, and it's actually going to be safer for all of us on the road, because there'll be a critical mass of cyclists. We'll get used to one another as neighbors on the road, and maybe we can be as bike-friendly as Denmark one day. That's the goal, and we've got some experts who can help point the way.
Thank you. Any additional comment or discussion on the motion to adopt? Hearing none. All those in favor of adoption, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. And I guess we'll head down also for a third photo. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, thanks for your leadership. Yeah, good to see you. Thanks for your leadership. Yeah, good to see you again. Thanks for your leadership.
How are you? Good to see you.
All right. Smile. 1, 2, 3. And again. 1, 2, 3. All right. Great. Thanks.
Yeah. I'll just do short things.
Did you try? Yeah. I just heard it.
First time ever, which is pretty impressive. Much better than I do at home. Sure. I'm sorry, we did also have a Bike Lakewood representative here just to briefly make a comment.
I just quickly wanted to talk about Bike Month and why it's important. There are several events that go on, and it's all in celebration of a National Bike Month. And recognizing it in Lakewood is very important because it promotes the visibility of cyclists, but also shows that the community is together in their vision of a walkable and cyclable, mobile city. The first thing to talk about is we are celebrating a Bike to School week this week, and there are various events going on with that, mainly with kids receiving prizes for bicycling in every day this week. And then there'll be like a grand drawing for prizes that have been contributed by the 2 bike shops in Lakewood, Beat and Spin. Next Friday is Bike to Work Day, and that's a national event as well to promote commuting safely to work and trying to reduce the fossil fuel use of cars. And the last thing to talk about is not necessarily happening this month, but with the help of the city, we are running some safety courses throughout the season. There should be 5 of them, I think, and the Bike Cleveland is running them and teaching people about the best practices for commuting, how to cycle safely, and those should be advertised around the city this summer if people are interested in them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Congrats again. Okay. I believe that takes us back to the actual top of our docket at this point.
Item 1, Committee of the Whole Report regarding May 7, 2018 Committee of the Whole meeting.
Move to defer. Second. A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to defer? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 2, Ordinance 2718, an ordinance to take effect immediately provided it receives the affirmative vote of at least 2/3 of the members of council, or otherwise to take effect and be enforced after the earliest period allowed by law, authorizing the execution and delivery of an agreement by and between the City of Lakewood, a municipal corporation and political subdivision in and of the state of Ohio, and Carnegie Management and Development Corporation, an Ohio corporation, related to the development of city-owned property at the southeast corner of Detroit Avenue and Bell Avenue, and authorizing and approving related matters.
Thank you. As was noted with the Committee of the Whole meeting that preceded our regular council meeting here tonight, council's met on this topic a great number of times. Leading up to tonight's Committee of the Whole meeting, at which we finally got to the point in our process at which there were no additional questions or concerns for council to raise. So given that that's the case, as of course we always do, we'll give council members an opportunity to weigh in on this item. But before we do that, we have a number of people who are signed up to speak on this item, and we'll go ahead and jump into those speakers without objection from my fellow colleagues. The first speaker signed up is Marguerite Harkness.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to address you. Well, we're voting to give away our hospital, our city's largest and most valuable economic asset, our economic engine, and give up $3 billion with a B dollars of economic activity over a decade. You know, at first, the thinking people of this community were just incredulous. We thought you must be ignorant. So we gave you the benefit of the doubt and tried to educate you. When that didn't work, we figured you must be stupid. Who in their right mind would push for a scheme like this? I personally was amazed that you didn't mind that we thought you were stupid. When we got documents in discovery, the phony decoy Vision 2010, the secret and concealed decanting plan, the complete, hidden, and ignored Metro proposal, then we realized you weren't stupid. You had engineered a multi-year, premeditated conspiracy to rob our city of its biggest financial asset and give it to a couple friends of the mayor and apparently the county executive, because he didn't balk at our county losing this asset and even rewarded some folks from that podium with jobs at the county. He didn't even mind that the critical care given to the indigent by Lakewood, by Metro Hospital was going to be increased by losing Lakewood Hospital, which was providing millions of dollars of that care. You folks were conniving, you were greedy. This was an evil conspiracy to suck the city dry and create a healthcare desert in the midst of 125,000 population, our 5 zip codes that relied on Lakewood Hospital. There is absolutely nothing you can put in there by Carnegie or anybody else that can make up for the economic loss to this community, the $1 million a year of income tax on the hospital employees. The Cleveland Clinic will tell you, and they published in April of 2015 when I read it to you, that every hospital employee job is worth $250,000 in economic activity in the community. And I will tell you that the jobs in Avon are not bringing economic benefit to Lakewood. You all should be ashamed of yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker signed up is Dean Dilzell.
Hello, my name is Dean Dilzell. I live at 1276 French Avenue. And I just want you to know I come before you today, Mayor, Council, City Executives, as a concerned, involved citizen in the issues that have affected Lakewood over the last 3 to 4 years. But I think it's important that we make sure that we speak honestly and openly about all the issues, and I'd like to make a few points tonight. First of all, for those of us that actually work in the healthcare field, we would not call what is now in the hospital building an ER. And for clarification, the new ER and the Family Health Center will have even fewer services than are currently being provided. I wanted to point out that despite the discussions you had earlier today, any vote that would be held tonight on the development project, the hospital cannot be demolished until the appeals court makes its ruling. And in conjunction with that, I wanted to point out in the term sheet that Section 3, property conveyance, due diligence period, it said the developer will have a period of 9 months following the execution of a development use and sale agreement mutually agreed upon by the city and developer, which period may be extended for an additional 3-month period. So I think it's fair to say that some of the carrying costs that were presented here tonight are going to happen whether the hospital demolition occurs as soon as possible, the 9 months, or is delayed for some period of time. I don't think that was made clear tonight during the discussion. That's just an issue that I think it's important to recognize in this deal, in the hopes that we don't make the same kind of mistakes that we made in the master agreement with the Cleveland Clinic. In addition, Section 2F, the parking requirements, there's a paragraph that says the developer has been advised that the city has certain parking obligations related to the project site under the master agreement. I believe that commitment is for 325 parking spaces, which may involve a contemplation of a parking garage of 120 spots for $2.5 million. So it sounds like the city would be on the hook for another 205 spaces. I haven't heard any discussion about that out here. Considering the issue with parking in the city, I think that's something that we ought to bring out in the open. And lastly, I wanted to point out that in theory, the return on investment for the project would happen sooner because the assessment was for 5.2 instead of 6 million. But that would only be if you do not count the $7 million that's used for the demolition of the building and to prep the site when you do your return on investment calculation.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker signed up is Patty Ryan.
Council President O'Leary and members of City Council. The Lakewood Chamber of Commerce was established in 1911 to advance the commercial, industrial, and professional interests of the community of Lakewood. On behalf of our membership and board of directors, I would like to address council this evening regarding 1 Lakewood Place and the term sheet. When reviewing the term sheet, the Chamber of Commerce focused on factors that would lead to future economic growth and allow Lakewood to be competitive in attracting new businesses and the best jobs. We asked ourselves, what would advance the business interests in Lakewood? First, we agree with Carnegie Development's assessment that a vibrant mixed-use development, including Class A office space, retail, residential, and structured parking, would strengthen and enhance the economic development fabric of downtown and greater Lakewood. In our opinion, one of the most important components to the success of this project is the creation of Class A office space. Lakewood is currently at a disadvantage because we don't have the type of office space and amenities that many employers are seeking. Class A office space attracts high-growth industries, including technology, media, advertising, and to some extent, co-working. These tenants seek high-tech, high-end office space with access to interesting community spaces and neighborhood amenities, all of which are included in the term sheet. Class A office space will help Lakewood attract new companies, which typically employ a higher paid workforce. The term sheet also calls for the addition of brand new retail space, which Lakewood currently lacks. This new construction will attract a new class of merchant seeking modern amenities. The new space will integrate with the surrounding neighborhood, including the historic Curtis Block, and would enhance our eclectic downtown corridor. The Lakewood Chamber reminds City Council that approving this term sheet is part of a longer process that allows participation and feedback from the public. We commend the inclusiveness of this process as it's described in the term sheet. It includes ongoing community engagement and citizen input throughout the design, review, and approval stages. We will encourage our business members and local professionals to participate in these community discussions and share their business perspectives, vision, and expertise. The Downtown Development Project is an exceedingly rare opportunity for our community to design and create a new space that captures the essence of Lakewood and invests in our future. We urge members of council to approve the One Lakewood Place term sheet and ensure this once-in-a-generation opportunity isn't squandered. Thank you for your time and your respect and consideration of our organization and the broader business community's viewpoint.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Our next speaker signed up this evening is Jay Carson.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of council. I will be extremely brief in light of other events going on tonight. I wanted to say thank you to council for all the work that you've put into this. Over the past 2 years, the slings and arrows that you have endured, and some of them quite justified probably. Look, people ought to hold their government's feet to the fire, but you have worked through those. And I want to say thank you to the members of the commission that waded through the applications. Thank you to Carnegie to putting on the presentations to inform the public about what's going on. That said, I don't know what council's mind is to vote this out, but I would say we stand at the edge of something truly great, of creating a situation where we've got $1.5 million new dollars of tax money from property that's never been taxed before. It's going to go to the schools that will benefit our community. We'll create a vibrant downtown center. I mean, I can imagine it being like the meltdown and the light parade, I mean, almost every night. I mean, think of the potential there. To those members of council who are wavering or are not inclined to this plan, I'd ask the rhetorical question, then what? If not this plan, what plan would you vote for? Because we've had this building sitting there empty for 2 years now. The hospital's gone, it's not coming back. No one has stepped forward to run a hospital there. So let's move forward with this plan that has been fully vetted by members, by the voters, by council, by the committees, and by you all. And lastly, again, appropriate of tonight, I understand any of these kind of decisions are tough, and you have to have courage and you have to have confidence. And looking, I'm thinking back to the game a couple nights ago. LeBron James getting the ball with 1.5 seconds left and having the confidence to make that shot. And that's what I'm asking council to do tonight. Have the confidence. All of these people, the people of Lakewood, the mayor, the commissions, the voters have given you the ball. Take the shot. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker signed up is Tom Monahan.
Good evening. My name is Tom Monahan. I live at 1487 Waterbury Road. I speak to the term sheet tonight. I've been up before this council before to talk about how bad the letter of intent was, how miserable the master agreement was, and I'm looking at this letter of terms tonight. I don't know if you folks up there realize, but in here, you're blocked out of it completely. I'm going to go through a couple of points here. On page 2, Article 2A, you should insert in for council's review also. 2B, strike the final line and insert background and record check and a 60-day notice. 2E, the developer talks about features. What features? 2D, public plaza, insert the word in perpetuity. 3A, at the end of line 11, add, the developer shall at his expense use off-duty Lakewood police officers for traffic control and security of the site until the project completion. No city police or other departmental equipment shall be used during the construction period. 3I, insert before B, all documents shall be made public on demand by the public. 3I, continue at the end of D, add upon termination, the developer at his expense shall secure the site. 3II, second paragraph on page 7, delete, developer and city agree to share associated costs to the extent mutually agreeable, and replace it with the developer shall bear all costs. 6B, meetings monthly with the public and contractors and subcontractors shall have weekly meetings that can be attended by the public if they so wish. On page 7, Article 7, insert in the first line, rubbish and trash. Here's the best one of them all. On page 10, 6C, miscellaneous. Concerns monthly income tax payments. You have a principal in this organization, I understand, has a company that's being sued by the city of Beechwood for lack of payment, prompt payment. I suggest that you put in here, these payments shall be made monthly. Failure to make payments shall be the cause to remove a contractor, subcontractor, or consultants from the project, and work shall cease until the matter is rectified. Now, you've got some tradesmen sitting in the back of the room, and they're not going to be too happy about this. But I've seen enough of these term things that it's one-sided for the developer. We are the public. You gave this hospital away. You're continuing to give things away, Mike. It's a disgrace. You ought to be ashamed of yourself, really.
Thank you. Our next speaker signed up is Judy Gillespie.
My name is Judy Gillespie, and I don't live here in Lakewood anymore. I live in Olmsted Falls, Ohio. I live at 23003 Chandler's Lane. However, as most of you know, I had lived here for 46 years. I moved in 2015. However, my reason for being here tonight to speak is that I'd like to say that the state of Ohio has enacted current laws that prohibit and punishing bullying of multiple and diverse groups of people of all ages. The big question in my mind focus is just why Lakewood taxpayer residents blindly tolerate their city government and council to continue to ignore their fiduciary responsibilities and duties through each of their public elected positions for the sole purpose of speaking a collective voice for all of the people, not just their personal, political, ever-changing career choices. When you make a choice to move on, you don't take any of the people with you. You take your career with you. And I do believe that that's a form of bullying for the residents of Lakewood that are acted as if they're incidental casualties. Now this city's residents are being asked to sell the hospital building and the property, the vacant property, the vacant hospital building and the property under it for what I have heard to be a ridiculous amount of $1. Now, I haven't gotten into the nuts and bolts of it because I can't believe you guys anymore. So I just would like to know that I had paid for 64 years on the building and property where I lived in Lakewood. In 2015, as I mentioned, I did move to another area where I do have hospital services within a 3-mile radius. What would your response and answer be if I asked any one of you, including Mr. Mayor over there, if you were told that you'd need to consider selling your house in Lakewood for $1? Would that make you happy? Would that treat you like you have an importance in the community that you've chosen to live in the number of years that you have? How would that make you feel? And that building up on Detroit Avenue is owned by every one of the residents that are behind me that have paid their continuing taxes for that building and the property. And yet you have been able to negotiate with all kinds of different bedfellows that you choose to sleep with to corrupt and take this city down into a place that I'm embarrassed to tell people that I used to live here. Because you guys follow a man over on that side of the room that isn't worth following. And you should make a better choice than your friends. Your mom and dad would tell you that.
Thank you. Our next speaker signed up is Steve Skanzos.
Steve Skanzos, 1437 Parkwood. I'd like to thank you, Council, for the opportunity to talk on this topic for the proposed development in downtown Lakewood. I've been here for the last 3 weeks. Every member of council has asked intelligent and very thoughtful questions regarding people concerned in their wards or throughout the city about this project. I feel that it is my opinion this basic term sheet for the project to have the ability to market itself appropriately, it is necessary to approve the term sheet so that they can do so to have other retailers really pique their interest investing in this city. Lakewood is a fantastic city. Everybody that lives here, we already know it. Having some retailers that are in other areas of the state or potentially country that we don't have here, I think they will understand how great of a place this is. But we need to make sure that we keep the possibility of this project for us to be able to build it, create jobs there, create jobs for people working at these commercial retail spaces, and also the possibility of everybody from other cities coming to realize how great this city is. You know, North Olmsted has retailers, Westlake has retailers that are larger. Lakewood is predominantly a small business place, and that's why we're special compared to everybody else. But let's stop our citizens from heading out to other cities for big box stores, and let's bring a couple here so maybe we can keep the more money in here and have people from other cities come here too as well to know how great this city is. So I really think that this, the approval of a term sheet is a small step to bring other commercial entities here, that it could be really, really fantastic for this city. So I urge you to approve tonight's vote for the term sheet. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for your patience. We've got 4 more folks signed up to speak here, and the first of those remaining 4 is Tara Peppard.
Tara Peppard, 1278 Edwards Avenue. Members of council, council president, I am here, I'm standing before you with a few concerns. I'm here to remind you, make public record note that Judge Elizabeth Blackman has spoke. She has placed a restraining order so that you cannot move forward and knock down our hospital. I also want to point out, as you spoke here this evening about gun violence, and I apologize, I'm pulling up on my phone some statistics on the economic impacts of gun violence. In Washington, D.C., every 10 fewer incidents of gunfire are significantly related to 1 new business opening, creation of 20 more jobs in new businesses, 1.3 million more in sales at new businesses, and the #1 area of economic development, if you look, is healthcare. You've placed a restrictive covenant on the 5 acres that you are giving away to Carnegie Development for $1. It's wrong. It's morally wrong. And I know how the vote's going to go tonight. There's a reason Cindy Marks is out and that Tristan Radar and Megan George are here. There's another one that's out, but there's a reason. The people are upset, and I don't know, you had the lowest amount of votes, and you were a member of LHA.
Sorry, ma'am, please.
Okay, sorry.
You're
My
reminded to
apologies.
direct your comments to the chair
Okay,
and
my
keep them
apologies, but I
civil.
want you to know the people have spoke with that vote. And I will be out there tomorrow to support Mike Skindell, who was one of the few politicians with courage, backbone, and genuine leadership to stand up against this atrocious behavior of civil servants. So the #1 area of economic impact is healthcare. Gun violence is directly related to this, and you sit up there and you smile and you put forth this order that you know, saying how you are all for this. Well, you are hurting and harming our city. There have been safety assessments, community risk assessments, and I know Chief Gillman, one of the students, presented some information about her risk assessment paper. And basically, the ambulance runs went from 400 to over 2,000. Clearly, you've put our community at risk. And you had the option to not do this. So tonight, I know how the vote's going to go. There's going to be 2 people with courage, and the rest of you are going to go along. And I understand there's some association with one of our council members, Councilman O'Malley, with the tradesmen. Well, there's plenty of other work for the tradesmen, but not our hospital. The INA building, University of Akron has left. That woman spoke about Class A office space. We just lost Hospice of the Western Reserve. We lost 1,100 jobs, and Marguerite Harkness spoke, giving you statistics. Mr. Tom Monahan, I really hope you wrote down all of those facts that he pointed out. I really worry about the maturity and the wisdom as you look at these numbers. I remember sitting with Brian Essie, and I don't think you knew all the numbers of that master agreement, a 92-page paper. I would earnestly ask you to refer, and when Ed Graham speaks later, refer. These people have wisdom, and I don't know why you're voting in the way that you are and allowing this destruction to our city. Walkable, bikeable? My kids used to be able to take their bikes over and get their physical papers from Metro Health. And my kids cannot use the health center at the high school. We're Metro. And Metro genuinely put forth an order. So how that was ignored? This was rigged. And I do want public record to also include the fact that Councilman Bullock had tried to redact his statements, being a member of LHA and being a member of council. To try to redact what you voted on is wrong. And for our law director to have also, and I stated this last week, but for our law director to have gone with Ed Fitzgerald with that neighborhood news, this is wrong. The informed people are speaking tonight and imploring you to stand and not accept this deal with Carnegie Development. It's not acceptable to give for $1 or whatever the agreement is. It is not acceptable. And then the company, and I did look up, there are taxes. They haven't paid their taxes. And you're just going to hand it over to them? That's unconscionable. It's morally reprehensible. And so I realize this is probably one of the last times I'm going to be speaking tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker signed up is Ed Graham. Mr. Graham.
Edward Graham, 1286 Chase. The mayor at the May 30th meeting accused the citizens who have gone to court to save Lakewood Hospital of misleading the court by their motion for a TRO to keep the hospital from being destroyed. The truth is that the administration with Ordinance 27-18 is misleading City Council right here and right now. The ordinance's first section alone authorizes the execution and delivery of the non-binding term sheet. There is no need for sections 2 and 3 other than to mislead the City Council. Buried among the 87 words of section 2 is the 11-word statement. The mayor is hereby authorized and directed to execute a development agreement, not a non-binding term sheet, but a development agreement. Buried among the 69 words of section 3 is the 11-word statement. Chapters 111 and 155 are deemed to have been met or superseded by this ordinance. Chapter 111 regulates purchasing and contracting. Chapter 155 regulates real property transactions. You have heard endless prattle from the administration regarding the 11-page term sheet. What you have not heard from any of them is any explanation of why sections 2 and 3 are in the ordinance. If the true purpose of Ordinance 2718 is to authorize a non-binding term sheet, that is accomplished in Section 1 without Sections 2 and 3. You should note you don't see the words non-binding in Sections 2 and 3. Sections 2 and 3 not only are not needed, but they are insulting to council. You are being treated as if your job is to rubber stamp whatever the mayor places in front of you. If you vote for the ordinance as it stands, you are saying that the mayor is authorized to enter into a binding development agreement and that it is okay for the regulations contained in chapters 111 and 155 to be ignored. And the mayor wants you to approve such wrongdoing right here and now without even having seen what you are deeming to be okay. What possible justification could there be for you to abrogate your duty to the citizens of Lakewood by approving such action? Before you even know what it is, the ordinance should be amended and sections 2 and 3 deleted. That is the honest thing to do. Do not trust the untrustworthy. You, as citizens up there on stage, having been elected to represent the citizens of the city, have a duty to do what is honest and truthful. And to pass this ordinance to include 2 and 3 sections in it is totally irresponsible, and you should think of resigning from council if you pass such an ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just briefly note, with respect to that consideration, that council has had significant discussion on that point. In fact, at our previous meeting last week, there was an additional amendment brought forward that was approved, addressing those concerns. And also, the other thing that I think, in terms of historical context, that it's important to note here is that that mechanism, that process of approving a term sheet and then approving a development agreement in substantially the same form as that term sheet is nothing new to Lakewood. And again, that's what was done for the Rockport development on the city's east end during the George administration, and that's essentially the process that's being considered here by council tonight. So I think, again, I appreciate the remarks, but I think context and council's considerations to date are both important considerations there.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councilwoman George.
I just want to make a point that I made the other day, because we continue to bring up Rockport and the George administration, and I have to say yet again that this is quite a different deal than the Rockport development, which was an old car lot. It was not city-owned property, and this is public space. So I have to say that again. The comparison is just, I'm not seeing it. So I just want to make that for the record.
Thank you. And again, I would just note in response that public funds were used to purchase the property, and also by virtue of the fact that the property was purchased at that point in time, it was city-owned property. We do have 2 speakers remaining, though, and the first of those 2 is Dave Wondolowski.
Good evening, council. Last couple of times I was here to represent my members. I still am doing that. We certainly want to support the...
I'm sorry, sir, if you could state your
Dave
name and
Wondolowski,
address.
3250 Euclid Avenue, Suite 280, Cleveland, Ohio. I want to certainly say I'm here to support the Lakewood Chamber of Commerce. We're members of the Greater Cleveland Partnership, proud members, and for many years it was always a myth that it was labor against management, but we actually work well with our employers, Construction Employers Association, and as I said, we're proud members of the development community through the Greater Cleveland Partnership in downtown Cleveland. I'm sorry for what you're going through here tonight as a former councilman. I've heard this venom spewed before, and I'm sorry that you're dealing with that tonight. But I would tell you that, I have a great deal of respect for the movement, the motion Councilman Anderson made last week in an effort to put these assertions to rest regarding the term sheet. I think that, I sat here for the last two weeks. I'm here now, this is the 3rd week in a row, and I've heard the concerns of council. And I think that Councilman Anderson's resolution puts these things to bed. I think that we've got an opportunity here. You've got an opportunity to vote on economic development. If you don't like the term sheet, as in pure definition, the term sheet doesn't match what you've already got, then you've got an opportunity to vote against it. I think if you vote against it tonight, it's an obstruction against economic development in your city. And as I said before, I honestly believe that property will sit there for the next 30 years undeveloped. The hospital's not coming back at all. And also, the Rockport development was economic development. There was city funds used in that. Mayor Fitzgerald, mayors before him would have voted for this. Everybody would have supported this. This is about economic development and progress in the city. It's important, it's imperative that you vote for this tonight. It's imperative you support my membership. It's imperative you support the residents of Lakewood and bring economic development into this community, because I'm telling you, as I said before, every other community in the county of Cuyahoga or Lake or Ashtabula County or Geauga County would kill for a development like this. Please vote for this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last speaker signed up for this docket item is Terry Joyce. And I know that we've got, I think that there were a few other people in the audience who were looking to sign up and might have missed the docket item sign-in sheet. If so, please do consider signing up for public comment at the end of the meeting, but this is what we have for our docket items. Mr. Joyce, thank you.
Terry Joyce, 19601 Thornridge, Cleveland, Ohio. To the council president, to the mayor, all the council members and elected officials, and indeed the citizens of Lakewood. Although I don't reside here, I think I stated 2 weeks ago, by being in West Park, you almost feel like a Lakewood resident. So I really believe that I have a stake in this community, and most importantly, a lot of my members from Local 310 back here do live in this community and would love the opportunity to work here. We don't get that from a lot of communities, from a lot of developers. Matter of fact, not too far from here, in a school board, we had to go before them because they didn't care who they chose to redo their schools. They didn't care about their contractors. And we're in front of that school board now. They miraculously changed their tune. They're reaching out to us now to get local involvement, but that's after the fact. So before the fact here, you had a developer that reached out to us before I even knew what was happening in Lakewood. I mean, I knew, of course, we all knew about the hospital, but I didn't know about the vision that people were having to really make a destination in downtown Lakewood. And I knew a lot of the developers that were coming after this, knew a lot of the contractors that wanted to work with the each said developer, but nobody put a team together like Carnegie. And that's why we believed that they should be your choice. Now, you had to do your due diligence. You had to make sure, obviously, the city was taken care of through the term sheets. And I believe that, I believe what you've told us, and I believe that you've done that. You have a contractor there, like I stated 2 weeks ago, that countless times would reach out to local after local after local and said, hey, it would really be a great story if you could send a Lakewood resident to Lakewood High School to redo our school. And there's 3 members of Local 310 that were the recipients of those phone calls that were out of work. And that's the same contractor that was there. That's so happy that they teamed up with Carnegie. So we're just excited to put a shovel in the ground, excited about building a brand new Lakewood, and would love to be a part of it. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That brings us to the end of our, I know we've got some folks who are looking to speak on the docket item. I'm sorry, on behalf of the police and fire department? Chief, are you, chiefs, I should say, are you having someone speak on your behalf tonight? Okay, I appreciate that. Let's hold order if we can and have public comment at the end of the meeting as is signed up on the sheet. If we can, we'll move forward at this time with our docket item, with our dockets going forward. So that was, as I said, the end of the public comment that was signed up to speak on ordinance 27-18. And at this time, for the sake of procedure and council's discussion, I move that we adopt ordinance number 27-18.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. I will now open the floor for discussion on the motion to adopt ordinance 27-18. Councilman Litton.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you again for what I feel has been a thorough process of taking us through the entire term sheet. Thank you also to the administration for doing the same. To my colleagues, of course, for their questions, Ms. Nichols, for all of your help, and of course our residents for their feedback throughout all of this. I wanted to quickly address, for clarity, and because I guess the notion was shared with me that my moral character was in question through voting for this term sheet. that after looking at this project up and down, with no hesitation on my part to ask questions, certainly on the public space and on a number of other topics, I'm comfortable with moving forward with this project. The notion that the land is being given away for $1 is one that I find troubling. The land is the city's investment in a $75 million project without tax abatement. By comparison, I think we should all consider, hypothetically, if we would choose a $40 to $50 million project where the city sells the land for $5.2 million, or a $75 million project where the city sells the land for $1. I suspect most of us in this room would choose the latter. To compartmentalize this into the land sale alone, while ignoring the city's return on investment, would not be prudent. I would go so far as to say that to ignore it is to ignore the benefits for the city for the next 50 to 100 years. I think we have a duty to move forward with some form of redevelopment on the site. On a huge plot of land in the heart of our city, we have the potential for hundreds of living wage construction jobs in the short term and hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs in the long term. In short, we can't lose out on this opportunity. Further, and I've talked about this before, I also believe we have a moral obligation to find ways to honor the space that stood there for more than 100 years as a place for healthcare in Lakewood. And I do ask for this entire room, anybody watching online and anybody who's walked out of this room, for your help in that effort. Help us to honor the history of Lakewood Hospital in a way that will help us all come together as a city. And lastly, I remain committed to communicating with the residents of Ward 3, certainly, to be impacted by this project, and look forward to working with my colleagues and the administration to accomplish that goal. I think we'll need to work very hard to make sure that our neighborhoods are not negatively impacted in any way, and that our partners are held accountable for their end of this term sheet and subsequent agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Other council members, comments or questions? Councilman Rader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I've indicated before, I do intend to vote no, and I'm going to give you three kind of basic reasons why. And first off, again, thank you everybody who's participated in this process, for the public, to administration, and all the consultants hired to help us along. I really do appreciate all the input, and it's been great, and I'll talk a little more about that at the end. But I'm just not certain enough that this is the type of development that will thrive in this particular area. After speaking with many residents, many of them my neighbors, I feel that something along the lines of senior living, maybe even purely residential, or even a possibility of residential mixed with office, would be better fitting for this space. And the 2017 market analysis certainly supports the idea of there's a high demand for both residential and senior living in the area. There are a mix of residents in my neighborhood that are for this project. There are, and there's a mix of people that are very much against it. But I would say that everybody I spoke to expressed an interest to be involved with whatever happens in that space, and would very much like to be included, and would love to be reached out to even more than they have been. So I wanted to make that point as well. As far as process goes, and secondly, I've vetted many aspects of this process myself for the last month, and I have to say it is similar to how many other cities, big cities, do this development. There's not too much dissimilar with how other cities do it. The procedure used to produce this result overall was very thorough, was efficient, and was done in a very professional manner. So again, I want to commend and thank the city for the job they've done in going through the steps they have in this process. However, what really should have happened in my estimation, given the great divide in our community that really splits a lot of different communities within Lakewood, would have been to maybe adopt a process similar to what the school district employed that was really more community-driven from the very get-go. The schools created what was called the 50-year committee. I'm sure it was a very intense process that involved a lot of the community in the very initial stages, and it was very robust, and it took a lot of resources, right? It wasn't easy. It was a hard-fought process, and in the end, it might have not been the most highest and best use for, some of those some of what came out of that process actually took more resources than, it wasn't the most efficient thing, but it certainly helped heal the community and helped sell the community on school limits, which was having a problem passing up until that point. So I think we could have used a more robust process moving through this. But again, I want to highlight that the technical parts of this process were done very well. Bryce and his team were fantastic at going through and making sure that everything was up to speed and up to par, and I don't have a problem with the nitty-gritty of how this deal came together. Lastly, I am reticent about giving as much authority to the executive branch as this ordinance would. This has less to do with the mayor or who exactly would be making decisions moving forward in this project. I believe that it is the explicit powers to enter into binding agreements of this magnitude should remain with council and should be finally approved in open meetings. I feel strongly that this is our role and cannot support tonight this level of delegation. And to be clear, it is very appropriate and, in fact, best that these types of negotiations do happen in the manner they have, and that they're executed by professionals and people that the professionals have hired to come in, such as Ms. Nichols. And so people need to sit around the table behind closed doors and go through these processes of building them. But I still hold that council should have that final vote and final say over that agreement. And that the proposal that Mr. Anderson brought and that I supported, that we have more public meetings and more public input after this fact, I wholeheartedly support, and I want to thank him for bringing it up, but I don't think that's quite far enough for me. I would have liked to seen that we actually vote on the master agreement or the use agreement. So all that being said, I want to say that Carnegie Development team, in my estimation, is the type of partner that we want in Lakewood. You guys have been excellent. You've answered all of our questions, I think, honestly and fairly, so I want to thank you for that. And if this should proceed, I look forward to working with you in that. And again, Bryce Sylvester, the Director of Planning, extremely professional. Your entire staff has been fantastic throughout this process. The Mayor, the Law Director, thank you. And of course, the public, thank you. And I just know that you're heard. I'm listening. I think other members of council are listening to you, and we're weighing your input as you're bringing it to us. And continue to bring it, continue to come to these meetings and let us know how you feel. And thank you to Building Trades for coming. I greatly appreciate all of it. And keep coming, keep supporting your local government by giving us your input. So thank you.
Thank you. Other council members, questions, comments prior to vote? Councilwoman George.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, I just want to talk a little bit of why I'm going to vote the way I am tonight. Anyone who's been to the last few council meetings can see that this issue is personal to me. My family's been in this community for 50 years. I intend to stay here for 50 years. My father was on council when the city entered into the lease agreement with the clinic, and he was also there when they proudly opened the ER in 2002. And now I'm here deciding the future of this historic hospital space. But this is personal to more than just me. This is very personal to many members of the Lakewood community, and we can see that by the residents who've come and spoke tonight and many other nights. That hospital, children, babies have been born there, loved ones have passed on there. This is a personal issue for our community. But setting the personal aspect aside, I need to make the best decision for the residents of Lakewood on this development deal. Now, there are aspects of the development deal that I do like. I like that the building trades are involved. I think that's a very important component for me. I also like that there's Class A office space that's going to bring new tenants into the city of Lakewood. And I think it's important to have development on that lot to make up for the loss of tax revenue from the loss of the hospital. However, after many hours listening to the presentations from the administration, reviewing the term sheet, the documents, I do not feel that this development is the right one for the city of Lakewood. I don't necessarily feel that this is sustainable for the next 100 years of that site. I would have liked the city to have pursued maybe a lease option, as I believe that may have been one way to maintain ownership of the site. I've also expressed concerns over the public space component. And I also want to echo Councilman Rader's sentiments on the development deal. I'm not on board with approving a term sheet and ordinance that essentially removes council from approving a final development deal. The site is too important, the development is too important, and for me to turn that over to the administration and not allow council to have final approval, I can't get there. At the end of the day, I have to vote based on the best use of the site for the residents of Lakewood. We have to get this right. And at this point, I'm not convinced that this is the development site, best use of development for this site. So with that, I will be voting no today.
Thank you. Other council members, questions, comments?
Mr. President.
Councilman O'Malley.
Thanks very much. Want to echo what has been said by a number of people here tonight. The great work that was done by our development department and the administration, really appreciate. The counsel that we got from Tracy Nichols and Thompson Hine was first rate, and all the input that we got from our citizens. I took that part of this very, very seriously. Really wanted to make sure that we were hearing from people, and I attended certainly all the council meetings, but all the other public meetings that we had on the subject over the course of the last year and a half, and really thought that information was valuable. Went door to door twice in the last week in my ward to talk about this, and got a lot of really good input from people in Ward 4 as well. I am going to be voting for this evening. I want to just say that I approached this from the very beginning. I didn't really view this as an opportunity to relitigate the hospital issue. This was a development proposal that was before us, and I wanted to really judge it on its merits. I think the mayor and Director Sylvester will probably be surprised to hear that I was a rubber stamp. I think I asked a number of tough questions throughout this process, and got very good and thorough answers, and no one twisted my arm, and I came to the agreement, came to the understanding where I was on this on my own, based on the merits of this proposal. And I want to talk about some of those that really stand out most significantly in my mind. It's been mentioned that we are going to not have the opportunity to directly approve the development agreement on this, and that's true. And that concerned me at the outset, and I asked about that actually at the very first meeting that we had about this. What has assuaged me on that is the fact that it was stated to us that the term sheet that we have and that we're seeing this evening is actually extraordinarily detailed compared to most term sheets that we get when we talk about agreements like this. And I researched that, and that is true. The work that is to be done from here on out is relatively ministerial. And if there is a material difference between what we see in the term sheet here this evening and the final development agreement, it was stated on the record last week that there is an obligation to come back from council for approval of those changes. We'll also have the opportunity, thanks to Councilman Anderson's amendment last week, to get more public input and council input before that agreement is executed. We also had an opportunity as a city council, by the way, to give input as to what we wanted to see in that term sheet. We talked about that many, many months ago. Before we authorized the administration to enter into these agreements, council was given the opportunity to have that input and to make any suggestions that we would like. There's been the comments about the public investment element of this, which of course would and should concern anybody when we're talking about public assets being invested into a project of this size. I had a very hard time, actually an impossible time, finding any other project of this size and scale in Cuyahoga County where there wasn't public input, public investment, excuse me. In fact, looking at a similar project on the east side that is about to open, comparable project, although larger, but one that was a mix of retail and housing and Class A office space in a city, some might argue, better positioned than Lakewood in terms of leverage. We're talking about a public investment that was upwards of $40 million that they made in that project. There was For me, as chair of the Finance Committee in particular, but I'm sure as any council member would agree, there's an importance in looking at what the return is on that investment. I think it's been appropriately stated, the concern of the loss of jobs that has been caused by the closure of Lakewood Hospital. And for me, looking at this project, I view it really as an opportunity to put anywhere from 500 to 1,000 taxpayers back on that property. We talk also, as I mentioned, the loss of New York Life, their own admission that it really wasn't about the environment here in Lakewood so much as it was about the fact that we didn't have Class A office space, what they wanted. They ended up taking several stories of the BP building downtown. We couldn't have saved them if we wanted to, but here we are adding 100,000 square feet of Class A office space in the heart of our downtown, and I do hope that we'll be able to better attract and retain good-paying jobs here in Lakewood as a result of that. Finally, I do have confidence in the potential success of the housing element of this. I look at my ward, a lot has been said tonight about the Rockport development. The last phase was just completed last year, and those townhouses sold out a year and a half ahead of schedule at asking price. And so I'm very confident that we're going to see success in that aspect too, in bringing new residents into our city. Again, I think a lot of the questions and the criticisms here have been appropriate, but in my view, they're far outweighed by the potential benefits of this. And I'm hopeful that those will all come to fruition, and I'm confident that they will be. Thank you.
Thank you. Other council members, questions, comments? Councilman Bullock.
Thank you, Mr. President. The vote tonight, well, first I want to compliment some very thoughtful statements by my colleagues on council from all directions. I appreciate the sincerity with which council members are approaching the big decision we face and the complexity and significance of it for our community. Our vote tonight is whether or not to take the first steps to define, detail, and design the features of a potentially transformative project that I think we all want to see succeed so that it could do what it's designed to do for our community, redevelop the downtown, really transform it, develop the tax base, and have a positive economic impact on us. The Lakewood Chamber of Commerce Director very accurately said this is an exceedingly rare opportunity to transform the downtown. I'd even add it's to set the bar higher for quality because, as Councilman O'Malley said, we haven't had commercial A office before. We also have seen where one developer's success takes place, it can also happen that other developers follow that example and success, and follow-on investment happen. So for Lakewood, pondering the question of what do we do to get started on commercial A office space, you got to get started somewhere. This project would get us started. We all, I think on council, received a very thoughtful letter from school board member Linda Beebe, the dean of the delegation, who has seen really decades of change in not only Lakewood schools, but in the economy of our city and in housing tastes and many other trends. She's expressed support for the project because of the very real revenue it would generate for the schools and revenue that would happen immediately, right away, not a tax abatement for many years as a fair number of other economic development projects around our region have. And so, for example, I was just in Cleveland where some of the very nice private residential homes have a 10 or 15-year tax abatement. You have very appropriate investment by the Cleveland residents in their school system, and so the longtime residents see a tax increase, but the new residents in the new condos don't pay into that school plan and won't for some years to come. None of that are we considering here. None of that was even proposed in this development project. That's a very, very significant strength for our city, especially when you consider how much uncertainty there is from the federal government and the state government, given
cuts. Have faced nothing but cuts-orama from our partners in other layers of government. And quite frankly, now we've got the federal government bankrupting itself for decades to come. We're going to have to, if we're serious about economic stability in Lakewood, attract some economic growth from within our own borders. One of the major questions we spent time examining, and that was important to me and other council members, was the public access to the plaza. That will continue to be an important feature that we all have to work together to make sure that we get a first-class build, and that we use our zoning process for planned developments, which do provide controls for the community to make sure that there's public access and that it's kept in a first-class manner. But the good news, as we've come to learn, is that there's significant alignment between the interests of the private owner and the community. Essentially, we want almost identically the same thing, which is very beautiful, usable, accessible space that will make the development sing and be open to the community as a gathering, a crossroads, and quite frankly, a customer attraction for the businesses that are there. So we will have to continue to work as this project is considered, if we were to pass this tonight, through the Architectural Board of Review and through many other formal and informal means of input. But I think we can get there with the current ownership structure proposed in the term sheet, which we also came to learn was important for the financials of the whole project. Council controls is an important one. Some others have spoken to that here. I am, as I've stated before, jealous of council's prerogatives. I do think we have other levers we can pull. If council were to lose confidence for some reason in a drastic manner on the direction that the administration was headed, we could express votes of no confidence. We could pass other legislation. I think that would get our points across. I don't get the sense that that's at all what we're talking about here. In fact, we've all had the opportunity, and the public has and will continue to have very transparent opportunity to co-design the features. We've got an exciting conversation ahead of us if this project comes to fruition about the sustainability and green features of it. That's down the line, and I think the city wants to work in partnership with the developer to see if we can add financing that would add a new dimension for all kinds of things: electric vehicles, energy efficient lighting, responsible stormwater. We have the potential for a model, at least in some aspects, sustainable campus. That's also very exciting, and that will only come as we keep working together. Finally, the scale of this proposal is ambitious enough to replace much or all of the painful economic losses from Lakewood Hospital's payroll, and then some. And that's a big deal. There was no other proposal that took quite as ambitiously the requested targets in the RFP that the city put out. The city said, make as your central goal economic development for our community. And many of the projects had that economic development, many of the proposed other 9 projects, but none on the scale of ambition to be able to replace the $1.1 or $1.2 million annual Lakewood Hospital payroll. Well, we have in a conservative estimate on the combined real estate and income taxes, 1.4, upwards of 1.4 million, and it could be better than that. So this is a real opportunity. Lakewood is, as we've come to learn, in a hot market. We know that the market responded strongly. We've got a shot. I'm taking it.
Thank you. Councilman Anderson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I do plan on supporting this ordinance tonight, and I think all of who have taken an active role in the process leading up to this point, which extends far more than just a month. This goes all the way back to February of 2017. This includes those who aided in the creation of the city's request for qualifications and request for proposals, those who served on a 2017 advisory panel, and the many citizens who actively participated in the numerous public hearings and a Joint Planning Commission Architectural Board of Review meeting that were held in the community and in this chamber. Both evaluation rounds of the numerous proposals led to clear and objective results, which is a testament to the RFQ and RFP process. The overall process has been clear, reasonable, and level-headed from the start. I also thank my fellow members of council for allowing the establishment and engagement of our consulting and legal team from the beginning of council's process. Your response to our numerous questions and actively in the development of this term sheet have been very valuable, so thank you for that. I found that the administration has been fair and responsive to council's input, not just mine, not just in this chamber, but one-on-one. Again, I would like to think that Mr. Sylvester and the mayor don't consider me as a rubber stamp for the 1,700 conversations we've had on this over the last number of months. A key feature in this proposed term sheet, from my perspective, is the inclusion of the surety and performance bonds. So I appreciated the conversation in regards to how that actively gets activated should there be a need to do so. That's a big plus in my book. For those concerned about the additional retail space being part of One Lakewood Place, I would ask them for them to study the market analysis completed and submitted by Forward Planning, which found that Lakewood's current retail offerings might not offer the needed product or shopping experience wanted by all of Lakewood consumers. But in addition to that, Lakewood is actively engaged with business owners and retail space owners of all stripes. Many retail owners have utilized our Lakewood Storefront Revitalization Grant Program to make their spaces more competitive. Lakewood recently announced a small business grant program with the SBA and Cuyahoga County Department of Development to support additional small business growth. I do not think that the additional retail space called for in the One Lakewood Place will adversely impact our existing retail market. I'm also confident that the privately owned public space will be an appropriate approach to public space within a substantial real estate development, and I'm also confident that more than adequate protections are in place to ensure it will remain open and public for all. It's interesting, since we got the appraisal back on the 5.7 acres of land, the appraisal said it's actually worth less than $1. It would only be worth $5.2 million if we removed the hospital. And we all know, again, not relitigating going back to 2015, that hospital needed $90 million of investment to be competitive. That's right from LHA and the folks who are running the building. So to be able to turn something that's a liability on the city's books into a positive asset, I think is vital for me. And I think I'd like to echo some comments from earlier that the executive branch cannot execute a development agreement that's not in concert with this term sheet. And we're going to hold them to that, and I know they're committed to reflecting the term sheet, every comma, every colon, every syllable. So I do plan to vote in support of this ordinance tonight, and thank you for the attention.
Thank you. I guess that leaves me. A lot of what I was going to say with respect to this piece of legislation has already been said, so I'm not going to reiterate that. But I absolutely did want to take a moment to thank everyone who's in attendance tonight and everyone who's attended the great many meetings that have informed this process all throughout, including going back to the very first public input meeting that we had way before the city's RFP went out. And, you know, as other council members mentioned, the process here is very important. And I feel very strongly that we delivered on a very sound process. I think, as was mentioned, it was thorough, professional, and efficient. And I think, you know, there was a reference made to the school's visioning process for their new facilities. And, you know, I certainly accept that point. But to me, you know, it's interesting to look also at a different hypothetical, which is what happens if the schools had a piece of land that they had been using for a public purpose for a very long time in the heart of downtown Lakewood, and they found themselves no longer in need of that land or in a position to reinvent that land going forward. And of course, I'm being a little bit facetious because that's not a hypothetical. It's item 4, I believe, on our docket this evening. And the school board did go through a process for that. And in fact, when they went through their process for that, maybe it was either learning from their previous process with respect to the facilities, or maybe it's because that hypothetical is a little bit different from building school buildings, which will then continue to serve the public for decades into the future. But in any case, they went with a very different process. And in doing so, they actually reached out affirmatively to the city's Planning and Development Department for pointers on how to go about that process and administrating that process. And so I do think it's important that we compare ourselves to other public processes that have taken place in the city, especially on important issues. And I would just note that from my analysis, it seems like, again, we've not only met but exceeded those bars. And, you know, I also can appreciate the notion that some members don't feel that this is the right development for the city of Lakewood. I guess, as was mentioned by others, though, I mean, I think fundamentally that begs the question of what is the right development for Lakewood. And I don't know that in this process, at least from what I've heard, we've really teased out any kind of concrete answer to that question. Simply that this isn't the right development is, in my view, again, when you look at the potential opportunity costs and hard costs for the city in foregoing this opportunity, simply is not justifiable in a broader analysis. I do want to particularly thank our building trades members who are here tonight, not only for your participation in the public input part of this process, but also for putting your money where your mouth is and committing to potentially support this project if and when it goes forward with your hard-earned pension dollars. And, you know, I think, again, that speaks to the universally recognized strength of this project. I think it speaks to the truly collaborative nature of this project and the fact that it's, you know, private sector on development side, it's building trades, it's the city, it's everyone coming together and realizing that this is, the time is right, and this is also the plan that's right for the city. And I think that, you know, voting no in a way on that basis of this isn't the right development for Lakewood, you know, allows you the political convenience of at any point in the future simply saying something like, well, I think we could have done better, or I thought we should have, you know, done a longer process or something like that. And I respect that. I appreciate that. That's obviously valid feedback and comments to make. But again, I just think that truly the courageous vote tonight is to vote to support this project, to move the city forward, and to acknowledge that everything that's been presented as far as the process has been above board and above grade, and that the final, in addition to the process itself, the final product that's before us tonight is a standout product, you know, agreement by any comparison elsewhere in the region, or for that matter, even historically Lakewood. So that's where I would leave my comments tonight. And at this point, I would open it up to any additional comments from the administration. None? Great. Then I would, Councilman O'Malley.
Do we, just a point of procedure, do we need to substitute, or did we already amend it with Councilman Anderson's?
We amended with Councilman Anderson's last week, and the version that appears on tonight's docket is the amended version, so there's no substitution necessary. But I'll, Director Butler, is that correct?
All of that's correct, Mr. Chair, thank you. I wasn't trying to even clarify that, but I would ask in an abundance of caution for a roll call vote if possible.
Absolutely. Thank you. Then, there being no additional comment, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Anderson?
Yes.
Bullock?
Yes.
George?
No.
Litton?
Yes.
O'Leary?
Yes.
O'Malley?
Yes.
Rader?
No.
Thank you. That motion passes. Ordinance 2718 is adopted. Thank you. And of course, those of us who are here for item 3, the Finance Committee report, will not hold grudges against anyone who might be headed for the door.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah. I apologize. Madam Clerk.
Item 3, Finance Committee report regarding Resolution 899318.
Thank you. Councilman O'Malley.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a Finance Committee meeting on April 30th in the East Conference Room. We discussed Resolution 899318, which dealt with the high-rate treatment facility wastewater treatment plant improvement project. City Engineer Papke provided an overview of the proposed high-rate treatment facility as described in the city's permit with the EPA. The high-rate treatment plant is necessary to eliminate combined sewer overflow, which occurs when the wastewater treatment plant reaches capacity during wet weather events. This resolution will authorize council to enter into a water pollution control loan fund agreement in the amount of $13 million at 0% interest and in the amount of $5.7 million at a standard interest rate. The fund is a state revolving loan fund for large-scale projects. The loans are expected to be repaid over 30 to 40 years. These funds must be secured before the project goes out to bid. The city recently was awarded a $3 million grant and a $3.4 million loan at 0% interest from OPWC. The city feels fortunate to receive any grant funding as grants are more difficult to obtain. That funding, by the way, is separate from the loan fund agreement that's addressed in this resolution. In response to council member questions, Engineer Papke remarked further on the importance of the project. He explained that eliminating this specific CSO is a high priority of the EPA, and addressing it is a major tenet of our current permit. Engineer Papke further explained the next steps after council approves this resolution and the timeline of the project. The city's on schedule to go out to bid for this project in August. The facility must be operational by 2022. Repayment of the debt is not required until that time. The debt is enterprise debt and will not count against the city's borrowing ability. And a motion was made and seconded to recommend adoption of 899318 to council, which passed unanimously. Just want to also note that Finance Director Pei was also present in that meeting and very helpful. Also present were all members of the Finance Committee and Councilman Rader as well, and a member of the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file that communication? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 4, Resolution 899318, a resolution to apply for, accept, and enter into a water pollution control loan fund agreement on behalf of the city for planning, design, and construction of the high-rate treatment facility wastewater plant improvements project.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to adopt? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 5, Planning Commission report regarding 1456 and 1470 Warren Road rezoning.
Thank you. Director Sylvester.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Planning Commission met, I believe this was voted on in our meeting in April, to recommend to council to rezone this property. At this point, Mr. Chair, we would recommend that it go to a committee to discuss in more detail. Happy to go wherever you guys want.
Thanks. Move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 6, Ordinance 2518, an ordinance to amend Section 110502 of the zoning code by changing and revising the zoning map of the city with respect to certain property as set forth and described as 1456 and 1470 Warren Road from C4 Public Schools to C3 Commercial General Business.
Move to refer to Committee of the Whole. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to refer to Committee of the Whole? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 13, communication from Law Director Butler regarding resolution approving street encroachment permit.
Thank you. Law Director Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The resolution that follows this communication, which I'll commend to your attention without reading it, is a resolution that authorizes the mayor to sign what is known as an encroachment permit, and that permits a private entity to occupy the public right-of-way. Way back in December of 2016, the Architectural Board review, relying on the obligations that the city has under the master agreement approved a year earlier, approved the site plan for the Family Health Center at the southwest corner of Bell and Detroit. And as part of that site plan, there is a narrowing of the widened Bell Avenue right at the intersection of Detroit and Bell. That site plan has, instead of the roadway remaining as wide as it is, a narrowing of the roadway to permit the drive-up valet that is going to relieve parking congestion both on the site and at that particular intersection. So, and as we all know from being Clevelanders, the clinic offers valet parking at all of their facilities. This is not going to be an exception to that. So what the resolution that follows does is it approves an encroachment agreement that really just puts the city's imprimatur, final imprimatur, on a use that has been envisioned since the master agreement was signed and since the clinic went through the very public planning process and approval process for the Family Health Center. It went through, Bryce can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Architectural Board of Review and the Planning Commission and potentially the Board of Zoning Appeals. I think it's just the first two.
Just the first two?
Just the first two, okay. So in any event, that's what this encroachment permit does. There will be two things on the city's property. One will be that drive-up lane, and the second will be the monument sign at what is essentially would be the new corner of Bell and Detroit once that drive-up lane is completed. It is anticipated that the construction of the Family Health Center is going to be completed in June, and so I would ask for a relatively speedy committee process on this particular resolution. Potentially even by May 21, an approval. That would be next council meeting. Thanks very much.
Mr. President.
Councilman Bullock.
Thank you. Just to clarify, we're, Law Director, we're not talking about a physical change here. We're talking about use. Is that right?
Well, the property will remain street property forever. That's not unless the city were to somehow vacate the property, which we're not doing here. We're just giving the clinic the right to use, just as the ABR did in December of 2016, we're giving the clinic the right to use that public property for a private purpose. We're doing this elsewhere in the city with a sculpture, for example, in front of the Lakewood Public Library. That's on city property. It's in the public right-of-way, that large globe sculpture. And in order for us to do that, we have to give the library the specific permission to occupy that public right-of-way. Here we're doing it because we've always envisioned, well, at least since December of 2016, a narrowing of Bell Avenue. And in order for the clinic to continue to occupy that small strip, that one half lane or lane on the west side of Bell, they need the appropriate agreement from the city. This is what accomplishes that.
Thank you.
I can also mention one last thing, which we're happy to talk about in committee. This is an obligation under the master agreement. Once the clinic's plans are approved, the city has an obligation to carry those plans into effect for the Family Health Center. There are approval processes that are spelled out in the master agreement that we've got to follow. This is one of them.
Thank you. I apologize for not having listened closely enough when you were discussing this, but did you say that an approval is needed by on the May 21st council would be sufficient, or were you saying before May, in the sense that we need to call a special council meeting to approve this?
No, excuse me. On the May 21 council meeting, that would be perfectly appropriate.
Okay.
And it's possible that it could go into June, although I'd like to see if we can get it done May 21 in light of their construction deadlines.
Understood. Thank you.
Try to get the FHC open in time.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. I would move to receive and file the communication.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 14, Resolution 900018, a resolution to take effect immediately provided it receives the affirmative vote of at least 2/3 of the members of council, or otherwise to take effect and be enforced after the earliest period allowed by law, approving of a street encroachment permit pursuant to Section 90118 of the codified ordinances in favor of the Cleveland Clinic Foundation in furtherance of the approved site plan for the permittee's Family Health Center.
Move to refer to committee of the whole.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to refer? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 15, communication from Law Director Butler regarding resolution approving purchase agreement for Hilliard Theater property.
Law Director Butler, tell us the good news.
The Law Director taketh away, and
Yeah.
occasionally the Law Director giveth. This is a resolution that follows this communication that would authorize the mayor to sign a purchase agreement accepting the property that formerly housed the Hilliard Theater from its owner, Bob Dobish. It's been quite some time since that structure was demolished as a structural nuisance, public nuisance, and we've had an assessment lien on the property ever since. Not unsurprisingly, well, I should say unsurprisingly, Mr. Dobish has not been able to sell that property, nor has he listed it to our knowledge. We were in the midst of trying to negotiate for this property quite some time ago, and Mr. Dobish sort of disappeared. But we were able to convince him to rekindle those discussions, and finally he has seen the light of day and has agreed to transfer this property to the city. We are taking on of course, we're taking on our own assessment costs. We are accepting the tax liability for that property, and those assessment costs are among that tax liability. There's a small amount of unpaid delinquent regular property taxes as well that we are agreeing to take on in order to get this property for consideration of $10. I think it's around $15,000. We're going to confirm that with a title search shortly. And Mr. Dobish is agreeing to transfer it otherwise free and clear of all liens. So any outstanding mortgages, to the extent they still exist, will have to be cleared up before we accept the property. But we are excited now to finally get this property under taxpayer control and in the hands of the government so that we can figure out its highest and best use going forward.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 16, Resolution 900118, a resolution to take effect immediately provided it receives the affirmative vote of at least two-thirds members of council, or otherwise to take effect and be enforced after the earliest period allowed by law, authorizing the mayor and director of law to enter into a purchase agreement with Robert Dobish, owner of the property located at 16021 Madison Avenue, for valuable consideration, including the settlement of all outstanding claims against Dobish for the demolition of the structures that formerly stood on that site and was commonly known as the Hilliard Square Theater.
Move to refer to committee of the whole.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to refer to committee of the whole? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 17, communication from City Engineer Papke regarding council resolution request, storm sewer easement, Erie Cliff Sewer.
Director Benno.
Dear members of council, this resolution is for a request for an easement that should have been there probably 100 years ago that has not been there. This is at the end of Erie Cliff. The current owner is splitting the property and selling a portion of the property to build another house that has had a storm sewer pipe going through it to the lake for decades. There was not an existing easement for that pipe, and now the pipe is actually getting moved by the homeowner so he can make a buildable piece of property without storm sewer pipe going through the middle of what is most likely going to be a new house. So at his cost, he is, I believe it's at his cost, yes, that the sewer is moving off to the side, so the easement that is requested is for the new location of the sewer where it's going to be.
Thank you. Move to receive and file that communication.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to receive and file the communication? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes.
Item 18, Resolution 900218, a resolution to take effect immediately, provided it receives the vote of at least two-thirds of the members of council, or otherwise to take effect at the earliest period allowed by law, authorizing the mayor to enter into an easement agreement with JLL Properties, an Ohio limited liability company, governing the rights of the parties relative to a parcel located at Erie Cliff Drive, which grants the city of Lakewood access to the parcel for construction and ongoing maintenance of the underlying sewer lines for a payment of $1.
Move to refer to Public Works. Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to refer to Public Works? Director Benno, forgive me if you already mentioned this, but I assume this time sensitivity would allow a committee referral here?
Yes, that's
Okay,
fine.
cool. Thank you. Any additional discussion or comment on the motion to refer to Public Works? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? That motion passes. And that brings us to the end of our docket this evening. We've got a few folks signed up for public comment, so we'll hear from them. And then after that, we'll have announcements from council and the administration. The first person signed up to speak tonight is Steve Lamacchia. No, you're first. I'm sorry, if we can just take folks in the order. I get into trouble with people when...
Okay. Steve Lamantia, 2164 Arthur, in Lakewood, of course. I wanted to make a few comments. I've been to several of the meetings, and these are a little disparate comments, but some things I thought was important to address. First of all, I heard the comment last time around from when somebody made about questioning the validity of the election process because they thought that false information was put out there. I totally disagree with that. I think we have a very well-informed electorate that made decisions because they felt that they had faith in our administration and in city council, and they felt that the city should progress ahead, and that it was time to recognize that the hospital has outlived its useful life. I think there's an awful lot of people in the city that agree that it was time for the hospital to go. The demographics show that the median age of people in the city now is 34 years of age. If you read it all, and I know that you all do, you understand that people of that age and younger don't care for old things. They don't want their families' heirlooms. They want newer things. They have no attachment to and no sentimentality for the hospital. It's an older building that has to go. I worked there from 2006 to 2012. I know many of the deficiencies of the building. Just to point out a couple of them, just two, maybe three. The Joint Commission on Accreditation of Healthcare Systems and the United States Pharmacopoeia requires that you have a clean room following, at that time, 797 standards. By a clean room, this is an area to make IV admixtures where you add drugs to IVs, okay? And it has to be a specially constructed room with non-porous surfaces, with positive air pressure, with filtered air, with proper venting to the outside, okay? I worked in the pharmacy for many years there. We never had that room. When the Joint Commission would come in, the clinic would show them the plans to have the room in the future, and they let it go, and they let it go, and they let it go. But we all know the number one cause of morbidity in the hospital is infections. So what those rooms are designed to is prevent infections. The reason the clinic didn't do it, I asked the director of pharmacy over and over again, it was going to cost about $325,000 for that one room because it's located in the basement. And even then, it would not be appropriate because you could not vent the cytotoxic fumes onto Marlow Avenue unless you really wanted to destroy the people on Marlow Avenue. That's one thing. Okay, and I see my time going quickly. The second item I wanted to mention is if you're doing an elective cardiac catheterization, I've had 3, and I chose in each case to go to Fairview Hospital. The reason for that is that whatever society is the Society of Interventional Cardiologists. They say that if you're going to have such a procedure, you should go to a hospital where they have open heart surgery, where they have those physicians available, so that if something goes wrong, and sometimes things go wrong, you can immediately be attended to. Otherwise, you can die right on the table. And we did not have that capability at the hospital. Okay, those are just two things. I can also tell you that I lost count of the times working in the basement in the pharmacy where the power went out and we put extension cords, 100 feet extension cords to find a power outlet that was actually working. So it was time, really, for the hospital to go. I understand the sentimentality that people have, but the reality is it was time to go. And one other thing, I know it was mentioned about the possibility of Metro taking over. And I know I read in the paper way back, again, that Metro had reconsidered that. But just think, they're going to do $1 billion reconstruction there. And they're going to take down the twin circular buildings there that was built in 1970, 50 years ago. And we're talking, and some people are talking about trying to rehab a hospital that was built 100 years ago. It makes no sense at all. And I see my time is up, so I thank you for listening to me. And I'm really sorry for all the baloney that you've had to put up with.
Thank you. Our next speaker signed up is Tara Peppard.
Tara Peppard, 1278 Edwards Avenue. I would like to speak about Edwards Park before I come back to One Lakewood Place. Edwards Park, baseball park, kids have played baseball there. I took a few pictures last Saturday, and there's cars everywhere. Please don't put a market, some beer garden brewery. The beer garden brewery can move to Ivory Keys or the former University of Akron or whatever vape store that, the excess vape stores that we have in our city. Dollar stores could be replaced with a beer market brewery. I wanted to make that point. It's a very charming aspect of Lakewood, one of the few remaining. When I moved here, again, there was the Detroit Movie Theater. It's very unfortunate that now the city is taking over the Hilliard Movie Theater prior to the absolute destruction caused by the previous owner. That gave Lakewood character. And then the second reason I'm up here to speak is I want to say an authentic, genuine thank you to Councilman George and Councilman Radar. I'm thoroughly, my faith in humanity and leadership is restored by you. You were eloquent, you were articulate, both of you. I'm grateful because men like Ed Graham, Tom Monahan, Marguerite, that factual information, and they're trying to tell the previous council members that were here earlier with the decision to close the hospital and accept that master agreement. There was a total disregard, and I'm failing to understand how anyone can sit quietly and accept the behavior and actions of the previous council members that have all, of course, voted in favor of handing over, again, for $1, I'll stick to that, to $1 to Carnegie Development, who are delinquent in their taxes, and Ed Fitzgerald is associated with them. I find this morally, again, reprehensible. I'm sorry if you don't think it's morally reprehensible, but it is wrong. And how you sleep at night, I don't understand. I'm really struggling with this. Leadership is supposed to protect the people. It's city-owned, and you've heard, I don't know, those points that Mr. Monahan made, I don't understand. That should have been documented and looked at. The guy is wisdom. It's genuine leadership, even in my own career. I know the gurus in the area, and I refer to them. I don't arrogantly go along just because someone told me to go along with it and push it through for the tradesmen. There's plenty of other work they could have been doing, but not to destroy our hospital. And it is a fact, every aspect of our lives is affected by a hospital in a community. And I don't know why there's still signs around our city that say hospital. Those should be removed because these new people coming in, oh, we've got a hospital. They're clueless. and for you to think it's 50% transiency. There was not an informed vote. Absolutely not. Absolutely no one would say it's a good thing to lose a hospital. The babies, I love the emphasis, and I'm so grateful to Councilman George. What greater place to have your children? I mean, I wasn't even born. I'm from Geauga County, not remotely any association with Lakewood. But for babies to be born, for the Grace Unit, this is unfathomable. Every aspect of our lives was affected by that hospital. This is an absolute win for the corporation. And you, as leaders, just let it happen. And again, I'm absolutely flabbergasted. It is, I don't understand it. And I do agree there were some previous comments to say, step down. If you weren't going to step up, step down. You are my Ward 1 council member, and you have absolutely disappointed me and many others that I speak with, people that couldn't be here tonight. But to sit by and let your city fall apart, please, when this development occurs, which I know let's see, Judge Patricia Blackman, and I correct myself, I think earlier I said Elizabeth Blackman. Patricia Blackman, when she does appeal, or files and finds fault with all the shenanigans that went on for withholding public records and the twisting of the public records, when that comes to light, what are you going to do? I really wonder if you've thought about that, because I look forward to justice. She looked at, it's not moot, and don't do anything to that building. I really hope with the vote this evening, nothing is done. The roof, the foundation, protect that structure and the history and the greatness that came from it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes, Councilman Rader.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for coming and speaking. I just want to make sure that, since you invoked my name, and I do appreciate your accolades, but I do want to make sure that I'm clear that this decision in the hospital was very difficult for me to make. It wasn't night and day, and in the beginning I thought maybe I could support this if we could change some things and we could make it work. But I do want to say that I totally respect my colleagues, every single one of them, for how they voted on this. And I kind of count it as separate, I guess, from the closure of the hospital vote, which I totally disagree with that decision, personally. But I just want to make sure that I put myself on the record as saying I do respect my colleagues, and for the reasons why they voted, I totally understand why they did what they did. So that's all, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker signed up is David Turner from First Energy, who spoke at the beginning of the meeting and I believe has since left. Following Mr. Turner, we have Coletta Graham.
$47 to $63, it's halftime. Thought you guys like to know that. I'm directing my questions to the police chief. 2 weeks ago, on a Saturday, in the middle of the night, 10 cars were broken into and ransacked on Chase Avenue. And one of the homes left their back door open and a light over their kitchen sink. And they went into that home, ransacked the first floor. Thank God the people slept upstairs, stole her purse, got her charge cards, and stole the car. I have never seen or heard a thing about it on the news or in the newspaper. When you've had all these incidents on 117th Street, there was constantly. And I'm also very good friends with the woman at the top of Merle and Chase. I don't know if you're familiar with it. And I called her to see if she was one of the houses. And she said no, but the police had just towed a car from the top of the street. So I don't know, maybe I'm interpreting it wrong. I feel that whoever it was had this stolen car parked at the top of the street, and they went all the way down the street. I mean, this wasn't, like one house or two houses. I mean, if you talk about frightening, I want to know, do you have any more information? Were they ever caught? Or did they ever get the car?
So the car that was towed was a stolen car out of Cleveland. It was brought in by the people that did that. They left it there with some property from, I think from the burglary from the house. It was recovered in that stolen car. So we got that back to the owner. Their car was also recovered in Cleveland, and we've processed that and got evidence out of the car. That's still part of an open investigation into identifying the people responsible for that.
Yeah. By the way, I want to give you a round of applause and thank you. You've been picked as the police chief. Did any of you know that?
Yes.
For the best police chief going. I was
No.
really proud of that.
Thank you.
Do I have a few minutes left, real quick?
Sure.
Okay. It's back to the condos.
Okay.
Okay, I want to know, out of all these condos that have been built, have any of them gotten tax abatement?
Director Sylvester.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. It's a great question, Coletta. Some recent projects that have gone on. Clifton Point was 2011, 2012, and 2013. There was tax abatement tied to that project. It was a part of a community reinvestment area that allowed.
How much?
I'll have to check. The baseline tax value was maintained, so there were properties on that site that generated tax value, so that was maintained for a period of at least 10 years. On the improved value of the site. So the tax value maintains, and then anything above that is abated for a period of 10 years, and then at that time, it comes on the full tax rolls. McKinley Place is another townhome project that happened that did not have any tax abatement associated with it. And Rockport, which is mentioned a few times tonight, did have tax abatement tied to the first two phases of that project, which were back in 2006, 7, and 8.
And do you have any kind of a figure on how many condos have been built here so far in the city of Lakewood?
Yeah, the last few years, Clifton Point was 22 units, McKinley Place was 41, and Rockport is 51.
And Educators Music, they're putting condos in there, right?
No, not confirmed condos yet. There is new ownership at that site, but they're considering a number of different redevelopment options.
Now, when you say 10 years tax abatement, the people that bought these condos do not have to pay taxes for 10 years?
They do not have to pay taxes on the improved value. They have to pay taxes on what the tax value was when the site transferred.
Okay, real quick.
Sure.
When my husband and I put an addition on our house, we had to go and on both neighbors on both sides, so there was an encroachment. You know, in other words, that we weren't taking all the space up and they didn't have, you know, any room. Anyway, I want to know, these condos are coming right out to the street, for God's sake. They've just taken over every single area. I mean, there's just no space whatsoever.
I'm sorry,
They're
Ms.
allowed to
Graham.
do that?
I would be happy to
Very
catch up.
briefly, but if you're able to maybe catch up by phone or after the meeting directly with Director Sylvester, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good luck tomorrow.
Our next speaker signed up is Steve Egert. I don't know that he's here anymore. We will move on. We have Steve Egert again. Obviously not. And Pam Smith. Also not here. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our public comment. And as promised, we'll now turn it over for announcements from the administration. Mayor? All righty. Nothing further from the administration this evening. Announcements from council? No announcements from council? All right. No business further before council. Move to adjourn.
Second.
A motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to adjourn? Go Cavs. Hearing none. We are adjourned. Thanks.